Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, it's 3 o'clock. I'm Martin Daubney. This, of course, is GB News. Welcome to the show. We're keeping you company for the next 3 hours. We've got a cracking, action-packed show coming up. Top story this hour. As we speak, a protest is taking part outside a school in East London with chilling echoes of the Batley Grammar School incident. A pro-Palestine mob is demanding the head teacher resigns because he sent home a child at a primary school, remember, who was displaying a Palestinian flag. The mob are calling him an Islamophobe. They're demanding he is sacked. We've got a reporter on the way as we speak. We'll have all of that story throughout the whole show. Also, Sir Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, sat down with our political editor Chris Hope for a GB News exclusive where Sir Keir talked about using the nuclear option, unlike CND Corbyn, also talking about an interesting prospect of using offshore containment facilities to process asylum seekers. Sounds like a good idea, but would you vote for the guy? That's the big question. Next story. Another Tory rebellion is looming in the new year, this time over a preposterous net zero tax on boilers, forcing customers to get expensive heat pumps, and some of the Tories don't like it. We'll be speaking to one of them in the show. Pricing ordinary people out of the market, paying once again for eco madness. And Brianna Jai, who was sadly murdered. The murderers are to be named. The children, 15 and 16 now, will be named when they are sentenced in February, with echoes of the James Bulger case. We'll be asking, is this the right thing to do? All of that coming in this next action-packed hour. So this protest in Leighton in East London, I found out about it at 10 o'clock this morning. A friend of mine lives nearby, a young mum who's considering sending her school there. This school has 80% Muslim pupils, demanding that the white head teacher be removed. We'll be reporting from that live. The situation is on a knife edge. We'll be reporting live. All of that coming in the next hour. But first, your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. A murder investigation's been launched after a 4-year-old boy died from a knife attack in East London. The Met Police said they received a call at around 10:50 last night raising concerns for the welfare of a child at a property in Montague Road in Hackney. The boy was found with knife injuries and was taken to hospital where he died. The Met Police says a 41-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder. An inquest into the death of the asylum seeker on board the Bibi Stockholm barge has found he died from compression of the neck caused by hanging. The Albanian asylum seeker Leonard Faruku was found unresponsive aboard the barge in Dorset on the 12th of December. The coroner said there weren't thought to be any suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of the 27-year-old. A pre-inquest review is to be held on the 9th of July. The teen murderers of 16-year-old Brianna Jai will be named by the media when they're sentenced in February next year. A warning: the following contains flashing images. They stabbed Brianna 28 times after luring her to a park in Cheshire on the 11th of February. During the trial, media hadn't been allowed to name the defendants, identified only as girl X and boy Y, both aged 16 but 15 at the time. Her killers tried to blame each other for the stabbing, but yesterday both were found guilty of murder. A former British Army soldier accused of spying for Iran will stand trial in October next year. 22-year-old Daniel Khalif's November trial was put off after he allegedly escaped Wandsworth prison by strapping himself to a food delivery lorry. Khalif is charged under the Official Secrets Act of gathering information that might be useful to an enemy of the UK. He's accused of passing sensitive material to Iranian intelligence, which he denies. A memorial service marking 35 years since the Lockerbie bombing has paid tribute to the 270 people who died. The local clergyman who led the service called it a senseless act of violence. When the Boeing 747 exploded over the Scottish town of Lockerbie, it killed all 259 passengers and crew on board and 11 people on the ground. The bombing, which happened as the plane made its way from London to New York, remains the UK's worst ever terrorist attack. The Labour leader says there's a real and constant threat to Europe from Russia as he visits British troops in Estonia. Sir Keir Starmer's been watching training sessions on a NATO base bordering with Russia. He's there to show his commitment to NATO and to thank servicemen and women for their courage, integrity, loyalty and professionalism. Sir Keir warns that the West mustn't lose sight of Moscow's threat to Europe.
I'm here to say thank you to our troops here in Estonia, who are based on the border pretty much with Russia, for the work they're doing, keeping us safe, the work they're doing for NATO, but also to reaffirm our unshakable commitment for NATO and our unshakable commitment to Ukraine, and to remind everybody that Russia is a constant threat, not just now, but into the future.
Let's move on to travel now. 80-mile-an-hour winds are battering parts of the UK as Storm Pia brings chaos to pre-Christmas travel. One man's been taken to hospital after a tree fell onto his car in Derbyshire. British Airways flights have also been disrupted, and National Rail's reporting that routes across Scotland and parts of England and Wales are also affected. A yellow weather warning is in place in Scotland until 9 o'clock this evening. That warning also covering Belfast, Newcastle and Manchester. Some breaking news to bring you, and Czech police say there are an unspecified number of dead and injured people at a site of a shooting at a downtown Prague school. On social media platform X, police have posted, based on initial information, we can now confirm there are dead and injured people at that Czech school. More on this as we get it. And all Eurotunnel services have been temporarily suspended due to unexpected strikes by French staff. At least 24 Eurostar trains have been cancelled. The Eurotunnel website issued an apology, adding further updates will be provided shortly. The disruption is affecting journeys to and from London, threatening Christmas plans for thousands of travellers. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now back to Martin.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now let's get stuck in. We start with an extraordinary story developing in East London. As we speak, a primary school has shut after what's described as escalating threats against staff. It comes after parents were warned about their children wearing Palestinian flags at the school. And I'm joined now in studio by our reporter, Charlie Peters, to get the facts of the case. Charlie, an extraordinary situation, echoes of the Batley Grammar School situation. What's the latest?
Well, this is the Berkeley School in Leighton in East London. It closed yesterday ahead of a planned protest which took place this morning after some parents complained that pupils had been discriminated against due to what they described as pro-Palestinian solidarity, and they also claimed that they were discriminated against due to them being Muslim. Some of the claims put out today is that pupils were forced away from school, turned away, or denied their lunch breaks or their breaks with their friends during the school day for wearing Palestinian flags on their coats. In one example, an 8-year-old, it was claimed, was denied access to the school. And they say that several letters were sent to the parents of some of these pupils where they were threatened with referrals to the PREVENT programme, which is the government's counter-extremism duty, and also to the local hate crime team in East London. This is the Berkeley School in Leighton. Now, this is coming out a culmination of factors. It appears that reportedly at one event last month at the school, a Children in Need event, there were some people turning up with Palestinian flags, which could have been perceived by some as divisive, considering the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Now, the Lion Trust Academy, the Lion Academy Trust, which runs the school, said in a statement that schools had been shut and the letters had been taken out of context. They said that of the 1,325 pupils, just 8 received these letters. And they said, "We believe we are acting firmly on the basis of a range of evidence at hand, and to suggest otherwise is a distortion of the facts." The Trust also said that they had support from the Department of Education, Ofsted and the police. And I think the reference to the police there important as they attended this protest this morning. They said it was peaceful, but a road was closed for 2 hours, and footage seen on social media showed several people gathering outside the school in Palestinian flags, protesting outside the school gates. I spoke to a local mum in the area earlier today who said that they were concerned for the situation. They feared for their young family, saying that this sort of situation, inflaming tensions, was bad not only for the local area, but also for the children trying to seek an education and being denied that opportunity due to the stoking of those tensions.
And some of the protesters are masked. They look intimidating. They're shouting through megaphones, and they are demanding that the head teacher resign over this. They're accusing him of Islamophobia. An interview I saw, which purports to be from the father of the child, claims that the pupils at the school are 70 to 80% Muslim, and they feel the head is not representative of the community. Very concerning if the demands of parents could cost this guy his job.
And these protests were, as you said, perceived by some to be intimidating, certainly engaging very directly outside the school gates there. We've also seen footage of Palestinian flags being put up overnight on a residential street by the school.
On lampposts?
On lampposts.
Yep.
One mum telling GBNews this afternoon they didn't want to wake up and see these flags outside their window, outside their doors. So clearly a very inflamed situation. The school does deny the charge that it had discriminated against these pupils, pointing towards its policy on dealing with divisive or extremist content. Now, of course, that rejection is likely to further inflame the situation, referring to flags as divisive or extremist. But we'll await further details from the protesters and indeed from the school, as further commentary on this situation is almost certainly going to follow.
OK, thank you, Charlie Peters. And we have a reporter on the way now to the school, and we'll have the full details of that throughout the show, so stick around. Now to our exclusive interview with Sir Keir Starmer, and he's not ruled out launching nuclear weapons to protect the UK if he becomes Prime Minister next year. The Labour leader spoke to our political editor, Christopher Hope, as he visited UK troops at a NATO base in Estonia, less than 100 miles from the Russian border.
So, Keir Starmer, we're here in Estonia on the Russian border. It's a short drive away. How safe is the UK under a Labour government?
Absolutely. Well, there's been an unshakable commitment to NATO ever since NATO was first created, which of course was under a Labour government. This is my second time here to this base. I'm here today to say thank you to the troops, to reinforce Labour's unwavering commitment to NATO, but also, of course, our unwavering commitment to Ukraine. And I've observed, I was here 18 months ago, here today, there's a real driving sense of purpose here with the troops that are here on the front line since that breach of the border into Ukraine just 18 months or so ago.
If you win power, will you increase defence spending beyond 2.12% of GDP?
Well, we will always keep to our NATO commitments. I think what you saw at the end of the last Labour government was 2.5%. So we're clear that the first duty of government is the protection of the country. And so we're very, very clear about that in terms of the resource that must go with that commitment.
And the ambition is for it to increase?
Well, when the last Labour government was in power, it was 2.5%. But, there is a NATO commitment here, which we will always make sure that we maintain.
How far would you be willing to go personally to protect the UK? Would you launch nuclear weapons at Britain's enemies?
I think that the nuclear deterrent is very important to us. Obviously, I'm not going to discuss with you the circumstance in which they may or may not be used, but it is a very important part of the defence of our country that we are strongly committed to, along with our commitment to NATO and to the security of our nation, which is paramount.
But personally, are you willing to launch nuclear weapons?
Well, I believe in the deterrent, but as I say, nobody who aspires to be Prime Minister would discuss the circumstances in which that deterrent might come to be used.
And Sir Keir also told GB News that he would consider setting up offshore processing centres to deal with the surge in small boat crossings.
Will Labour back Tory amendments to weaken the Rwanda bill next month?
Well, I haven't seen any amendments yet to the Rwanda scheme. We do have to stop the boats coming across. We can't, and the government has lost control of our borders.
Will you say now, I will stop the boats?
Well, look, the government's lost control of our borders. I think the way to stop the boats is to smash the criminal gangs that are running the vile trade of putting people in the boats in the first place. Now, we know that what the operation is. The boats are made pretty much to order now. They're kept in warehouses across Europe, brought to the northern coast of France. When I was Director of Public Prosecutions, we took out terrorist gangs, we took out people smuggling gangs. I believe that we can take out these gangs if we put the political capital to it, make the necessary alliances across Europe and do work with Europol and others to take these gangs out. I want to stop the boats, and I think that the only way to do that is to smash the gangs that are running the vile scheme in the first place. That's where I'd put my energy.
Why won't Labour look at offshore processing centres for migrants?
I think there's a difference between offshore processing and essentially deporting people, which is the Rwanda scheme. The Rwanda scheme is a gimmick, a very, very expensive gimmick. We've paid hundreds of millions of pounds and nobody has gone to Rwanda. Other countries do offshore processing, and that is something, I'll look at any credible option. But I think that at the moment, the single most important thing is to take out the gangs that are taking money to put people in those boats.
So there we go. He's making his pledge to be the next PM, and I'm joined now by James Daly, who's a Conservative MP for Bury North. Always a pleasure, James. Straight talking fella. It's what we like on this channel. So there we go. So Keir Starmer wouldn't commit to stopping the boats once again. He did say he'd smash the criminal gangs, and also, interestingly, would look at offshore processing centres. Can Starmer be trusted on immigration?
No. He's voted 86 times against measures to stop illegal migration. He's voted 70-odd times against measures to delay or to tackle small boats. He will say anything to anybody depending on what the question is and what the camera is and what the political persuasion is. You tell me, Martin, what does he mean by there is a difference in the Albania scheme to the difference in the Rwanda scheme? We all know what the charade is about. They're in favour of open door immigration. It's as simple as that. And he's trying to dodge the issue. So no, he certainly can't be trusted in respect of this.
Well, he would say the difference is Rwanda is a deportation scheme with no chance of return, whereas offshore containment is where you process, and if they're granted, they'll be allowed back into the UK. But I digress. You have to admit, though, he said he'd press the nuclear button if needed. Makes a change from CND Corbyn.
Nobody in the right mind believes that. You know, let's be fair about this. This is the man who tried desperately to get Jeremy Corbyn elected as Prime Minister. It is genuinely say anything to anybody about anything. Come to Greater Manchester, and he's probably taking his lead from Andy Burnham, because this is Andy Burnham's stock in trade. Say anything to anybody about anything to get elected. Deliver nothing, and then, you know, this is the typical Labour way, I'm afraid. You know, we have to look at the facts. I sound something to you about, you know, his attitude in terms of what he's been voting against. It's all semantics. You know, and the country see through him.
OK, superb. James Daly, as ever, shooting straight from the hip, Conservative MP for Bury North. Thanks for joining us on the show. Now, people are dead and injured after a reported shooting at a university in Prague. Our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, joins me now in the studio. Mark, an extremely concerning story. What's the latest?
Well, this is an event that unfolded right in the city centre of the capital, Prague, in the old town at Charles University. Some reports indicating that a gunman was on the building, or at least neighbouring buildings, with a long-barrelled weapon, shooting into the crowds below, into the central square there. That is a very popular part, of course. It's home to the university, but it's also in the historic old town, so it is home, or at least it attracts lots of people into that area. Now, what the police in Prague have said is that people have been killed, an unspecified number of people killed and injured in Prague today. Officers have apparently eliminated, they say, a gunman. No further details than just that phrase, eliminated, which normally means they've shot an individual, but we don't know if that person is alive or dead. They've said, again, according to the police in Prague, based on initial information, we can confirm there are dead and injured people at the site. This is what they're telling local people. Clearly, they're trying to clear people out of that area at the moment as they deal with this, what was an active shooter situation. Just one shooter we know of, but as always with these kinds of unfolding situations, they don't know until they know. Was there one or more people involved? So while that is unknown, the area is being evacuated. People are being warned to stay out of that area until they get enough in the way of resources in to be able to determine that it was just this one active shooter at that time, at this time.
And we saw footage on screens there of people fleeing the scene. So obviously widespread panic, but the killer has been eliminated. Nobody else believed to be at large at present, Mark.
No, I mean, as always with these situations in the early stages, it's highly confused. People are hearing shots, they're seeing people falling around them, and the fact that the police are saying there is an unspecified number of dead and injured indicates that this shooter was active for some time before he was, in the words of the police, eliminated. But several dead is the latest phraseology that the police are using to determine the number of people who have been killed in this particular incident.
OK, thanks for that update, Mark. Well, we'll of course have more on that throughout the show as details emerge on that concerning story. Now, the teenage murders of Brianna Jai can be named by the media when they are sentenced in February. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
we're late. Get up!
This Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, wake up with GB News.
For the finest festive start to your Christmas for you and the whole family.
Christmas breakfast on GB News, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day from 6 a.m.
I got you this.
Oh, good. OK, I got you a little something.
Oh, I'm sure it's nice.
Welcome back. It's 3:25. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. In a few minutes, we'll look back at the Lockerbie bombing, exactly 35 years on from the UK's worst ever terrorist attack. Now, as if the drive to net zero wasn't costing us enough, people are now being hit with what's being branded a boiler tax. Rishi Sunak is facing a major Tory rebellion over his plans to fine boilermakers who do not meet heat pump insulation targets from next April. And manufacturers have already increased their prices of regular boilers, gas boilers, by up to 120 quid per unit to compensate. Well, I'm joined now by Catherine McBride, who's a fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy. Thank you for joining us on the show, Catherine. Quite simply, this is all stick and no carrot. People are being cajoled into getting these boilers. They can cost up to £15,000. And now companies are being fined. And to offset those fines, the companies are simply charging consumers more for regular boilers. QED, once again, the average taxpayer is paying through the nose for net zero. Am I right?
100%. It's kind of crazy. I don't know where the government thinks companies get their money from, but their only pool of money is their customers. So to fine them for not selling a product, which quite frankly people don't want, is ridiculous. There are many good reasons for people not getting heat pumps, and often they live in Victorian terraced houses where they don't have the appropriate outside walls. There'll be people who would need to completely draft-proof their house before a heat pump would even work. So the cost of installing one can be a lot more than the cost of the heat pump. You have a lot of additional costs of installation to add to that. So I think to add insult to injury by adding this fine, which is very regressive, it will hurt the poorest people the most. Someone like Rishi Sunak might not notice an extra 120 quid on a new boiler. But for a lot of the population, that could actually tip them over the edge and they won't get a new boiler. And yet even new gas boilers are a lot more efficient than an old gas boiler. So we'd actually be better off getting people to replace their boilers, regardless of the cost.
And Catherine, there are thousands and thousands of comments on this today online from people exactly as you say, saying I live in a farmhouse, I'd have to rip my entire walls out, I'd have to replace all of my radiators, and even then it wouldn't work because it's too cold outside. Is this yet another example, you think, Catherine, of metropolitan policymakers who are tied to a zealotry, who don't understand the actual machinations of the real world?
Oh, 100%. I would say not just Sunak, but most of his advisors are quite young. Many of them are renting. They don't own their own house. The cost of installing a boiler is not something they've ever had to do. It's something their landlord has to do. And so they really don't understand what the amount of money that is involved in maintaining houses, and the fact that a large proportion of the UK's housing stock is already built. And it was built 100, 150 years ago. If new houses can be built to the specifications to take a heat pump, or should be built. But there is another issue which everyone's avoiding. At the moment, electricity is charged at a kilowatt hour about 4 times the cost of gas. So not only are they more expensive to install, they'll probably be more expensive to run. So that there are a lot of reasons. People are not buying them because they're obstinate. They're not buying them because they've done the maths and they've gone, this doesn't make any sense. Why would I buy a substandard technology that costs me more?
OK, Catherine McBride, Fellow at the Centre for Brexit Policy. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much. It's the clean heat market mechanism. The trouble is Labour will probably vote with this. So there's going to need to be a substantial revolt. Otherwise, this will end up costing you in your pocket. Now, you could start your new year with £10,000 in cash, a 500 quid shopping spree and a brand new iPhone. Sounds amazing, right? Well, here's how you can make all of those prizes yours.
This is your chance to win cash, treats and tech in our very first Great British giveaway. There's a totally tax-free £10,000 cash up for grabs. Cash which would help make 2024 a whole lot better. We're also going to send you shopping with £500 worth of vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. What would be on your shopping list? If it's a new iPhone, we've also got that covered too, with the latest iPhone 15 Pro Max, which you'll also receive. For your chance to win the iPhone, the vouchers and £10,000 cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB01, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 5th of January. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Now, we've got lots more on the way on this afternoon's big breaking news. Several people have been shot dead in Prague. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sam Francis. The headlines this hour. The gunman at a Prague University building has been eliminated. That's after he killed bystanders and injured dozens, according to police reports. Officers responded to reports of a shooting at the school in Prague, in Jan Palach Square. The entire university building has been evacuated. That's after an email was sent earlier to students and staff telling them to stay put and to lock their offices. A murder investigation has been launched after a 4-year-old boy died following a knife attack in East London. The Met Police said that they received a call at around 11 o'clock last night, raising concerns for the welfare of a child at a property in Montague Road in Hackney. The boy was found with knife injuries and was taken to hospital, where he later died. A 41-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder. An inquest into the death of the asylum seeker aboard the Bibi Stockholm barge has found that he died from compression of the neck caused by hanging. The Albanian asylum seeker, Leonard Faruku, was found unresponsive aboard the barge in Dorset on the 12th of December. The coroner said there weren't thought to be any suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of the 27-year-old. A pre-inquest review is to be held on the 9th of July next year. A memorial service marking 35 years since the Lockerbie bombing has paid tribute to the 270 people who died. The local clergyman who led the service called it a senseless act of violence. When the Boeing 747 exploded over the Scottish town of Lockerbie, it killed all 259 passengers and crew on board and 11 others on the ground. The bombing, which happened as the plane made its way from London to New York, remains the UK's worst ever terrorist attack. And you can get more on all of those stories and many more by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, here's a quick look at the markets this hour. The pound will buy you $1.2653 and €1.1520. The price of gold is currently £1,610.80 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,686 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's get more on that big breaking news story. People are dead and injured after a reported shooting at a university in Prague. Our Home Security Editor, Mark White, joins me now in the studio. Mark, very, very harrowing scenes. What's the latest update?
The very latest is that the Czech Republic's Interior Minister has confirmed that the gunman is dead. He was, in the words of the police, eliminated after opening fire on crowds below. Now, there are some other pictures that we'll be able to bring you shortly. In fact, there you are. You see what appears to be that gunman with a long-barreled weapon on the side of that building, of that university building. So whether the university itself, Charles University, was targeted or whether he was just using that as a vantage point, we have yet to establish. But clearly, he was able, several stories up, to be able to shoot down at people in the main square there, which is right in the centre of Prague's old town, very popular with tourists. And of course, the students for the university, they're going into that area around the philosophical faculty of Charles University and the Academy of Arts and Architecture and Design, which are located in that area. And that appears to be the part of the building he's on. Now, you can probably see from those shots, just quite incredible that there are about a dozen people or more who have gone over the side of that building, that balcony, if you like, just hiding down below the top of the balcony, clearly where he was shooting out from, just keeping their heads ducked down in a very dangerous and precarious position to avoid being targeted by this gunman. There are still images that show these people probably a bit better, but you can see them from the video just momentarily as that image is scooting back and forward from the building itself and then onto the main square where the emergency services are arriving here.
It looks like there are about 10 or 11 appears to be students just cowering on a balcony. Mark, they've clearly escaped from inside and they're hiding outside to avoid being shot at. And the weapon we saw there, Mark, from the gunman, a sophisticated long-barreled weapon with a sniper scope, that's a serious piece of kit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's clear, I think, from there that there's obviously access onto that balcony, probably students that maybe go out to socialise, have a smoke, whatever they might do. So they were probably in that area when the gunman opened fire, but they've climbed over the wall of that area of that balcony there and really onto a precarious position onto the ledge there, ducking down in the hope that they would not be spotted by the shooter. Well, the shooter now, as I say, confirmed just in the last few minutes by the Interior Minister in the Czech Republic. That gentleman there, we believe, with the long-barreled weapon has been eliminated, according to the police, killed. He's now died, according to the Interior Minister. A powerful-looking weapon by the you know, from what we could see there, on the long end of a lens and a bit fuzzy, but you can see the scopes, the sights on that long-barreled weapon, the tripod, or at least the two legs at the front where he was able to rest that weapon onto the balcony there as he was shooting down into the crowds below. And just picking them off. Now, we saw something similar a few years back, remember, at that casino in Las Vegas. At that very famous hotel where the shooter there was shooting out of one of the bedroom windows onto the crowds below. And of course, then people just don't know where the shots are coming from. They're running, but a mass of people. It was just easy for the shooter in Las Vegas, and clearly this individual, to just pick people off as they were running.
Very sophisticated piece of weaponry there, Mark. There'll be a huge conversation about how he got that and what that all means. But he's been eliminated, so for now the danger has passed.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty with these weapons is that mainland Europe is just awash with weapons. Many of them came from the Balkans War. They were deactivated. They've been sold in shops as kind of memorabilia of that particular time. But the criminal gangs are taking these weapons and reactivating them, and they're flooding the criminal underworld and then sometimes falling into the hands of terrorists as well. We don't know what the motivation for this particular shooting incident was, whether this was someone who had a grudge, whether it's terror-related. It's perfectly possible. We await word from the police in the Czech Republic, from law enforcement there, as to why this man decided to go on this murderous rampage right in the old town, in the centre of this beautiful city. Anybody that's been to Prague will know just what an amazing old city there is there. It attracts many hundreds of thousands of people from right across the world every year to visit that city.
Absolutely no doubt that this guy had planned this. I mean, it's a clear vantage point, chosen for its proximity to multiple targets. We don't know if it was targeted. You can see there, look, he's on a balcony, well set up, well rested. He seems to know what he's doing with that weapon, Mark. Here's a guy. He seems to know what he's doing. You can't get a clear identification on him from that. It's a bit fuzzy. But people cowering on balconies, they've obviously, as you said, they've jumped over. They're hiding from his bullets in the randomness of this attack on beautiful streets that many British tourists will be very familiar with.
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty for law enforcement as well is that he has the high ground.
Yeah.
So when they're arriving, you can see in this video in a second, one of the police cars, they're arriving in the square here. They then become targets themselves as they exit the vehicles and try to get control of the situation. So they've got to work their way into that building and then work their way up to the area where this gunman is. All of that takes time. And while that is happening, this person's still clearly was able to get shots off to the people who are running about confused on the streets below. It's a very difficult situation. I mean, it's difficult enough when you have gunmen who are on the loose and they are kind of running about at street level. But when they have specifically picked a vantage point where they've got cover behind that particular balcony up there as well, that stone balcony that he was behind, it's very easy, or very difficult, I should say, from someone at street level, impossible pretty much, to try and pick them out. They need to get into the building, they need to get up to access that roof and to try and take them out that way, which clearly they've done, but will have taken some time to be able to do that.
OK, thank you, Mark White, for bringing us up to speed on that shooting in Prague. We'll, of course, have more throughout the show as we learn more details on this dramatic breaking story. Now, the teenagers who murdered Brianna Ghey will be named by the media when they are sentenced. Brianna was killed last February and a boy and a girl were found guilty of murder yesterday. And let's speak to our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, who's outside Manchester Crown Court. Sophie, hello to you again. Very, very moving testimonies from the parents yesterday, and now a latest dramatic development. A lot of people were hoping these children would be named, and indeed, Sophie, that will be the case.
It is indeed, although we won't be able to name them until their sentencing, which has been scheduled now for February 2nd. This morning here at Manchester Crown Court, Justice Yip, who's the judge who's been presiding over this court case, heard applications from members of the press regarding the identification of girl X and boy Y. They set out exactly the importance of public interest, and as well the facts that ultimately in just under 2 years' time, when X and Y turn 18, we'd be able to report on their identities anyway. Now, in terms of not being able to report until the sentencing in February, Justice Yip said that was in order to give X, Y and their respective families the opportunity to prepare for their identities becoming public. She mentioned the taking into consideration of various vulnerabilities. For example, girl X, there's been concerns expressed about how that could impact her potential rehabilitation and as well the well-being of her family. Justice Yip telling the court that her family have already received death threats. She also expressed concerns regarding boy Y, who has autism, and that there have been worries about how that could impact him. However, ultimately Justice Yip made the call that the public interest weighed more heavily than protecting their identities, saying that members of the public had the right to know so that they could try to understand exactly how two children could carry out an attack of this nature. So in just over 5 weeks' time, we will be able to bring you the identities of girl X and boy Y, who as of yesterday were found guilty of the murder of transgender teenager Brianna Ghey.
OK, thank you very much, Sophie Reaper, for that update on the Brianna Ghey case from Manchester Crown Court. Now, I'll bring you some more details on that big breaking story. People are dead and injured after a reported shooting at a university in Prague. And I'm joined again by our Homeland Security editor, Mark White, for the full update of where we're at the moment.
Well, the very latest is the Interior Minister confirming that the gunman at the centre of this is dead. Conflicting reports as to whether it was the police that actually took him out. They've said he was eliminated, which would suggest that, you know, that they had killed this gunman, but there are some suggestions that the gunman may have taken his own life and fallen from this balcony. As always, with these unfolding situations, Martin, you get conflicting reports and it becomes a bit clearer. We think it's important just to share that with the audience, and also with these caveats that, you know, these are conflicting reports.
We've got some live shots from Prague there, Mark. Multiple emergency vehicles on scene. As you'd imagine, the entire area closed off. Again, as you'd imagine, a huge crime scene, Mark.
This is Charles University, right in the centre of the old town and surrounded by emergency service vehicles at the moment. As always with these incidents, they've got to make sure that everyone is accounted for, both in terms of people that may have been caught up in this, may have, in fact, there are There's a picture we'll be bringing you shortly that shows the lengths that some of the students in the university took, barricading themselves in to their own classrooms to try to stop this gunman getting to them. And we'll bring that to you shortly as soon as we get it cut up. We're just kind of piling through all of the feeds to look at the very latest and material for you. I think what we do have, though, is the early stages of this incident when this gunman was still opening fire. Some short video from that where, if we take a listen, you can hear the gunfire in the distance. Let's have a listen.
And people were... Yeah, you can hear... Yeah, you can hear those shots rattling off there, and other videos, Mark, shows people fleeing in abject panic. Of course you would. And then we learned later on he was on a higher vantage point shooting down into these squares. And as you mentioned, it appears we saw photographs of about 10 to a dozen students cowering on a balcony in fear of their lives out of his range. And the weaponry this man was using, Mark, looks sophisticated.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. We could see in the still image of the perpetrator, the man that's believed to be the shooter, showed what was a long-barreled weapon that had the legs at the front of it that allowed him to rest that weapon on the balcony itself as he continued to take pot shots down into Jan Palach Square, which was full of people at that time, an old square in the old town that is very popular with tourists, but also, of course, students for the various Charles University faculties, the old buildings that are in this area. And as I say, you know, we've got reports that have been coming out from some of the students saying how petrified they were. Still image that shows various chairs and tables and other items that have been placed up against the door to try to prevent anybody from getting in. Say the picture on the right of the screen for those that are watching on GB News television shows the suspected gunman. You're continuing to see live pictures on the left-hand side of our screen of the university with all of the emergency services still in place. Because, as I say, although this gunman, the person they believe to be the main assailant here, is now reported to have died, the authorities never know. They never know that there may be other accomplices, there may be other gunmen out there, so they've got to continue with these checks, a full check. They'll be sweeping the buildings of that university room by room to go after anyone that might still be there and armed, but also, of course, to bring out the students who've barricaded themselves into classrooms and dormitory rooms.
OK, thank you, Morgan. Let's get the thoughts now of intelligence and security expert at the University of Buckingham, Professor Anthony Glees. Thank you for joining us, Professor Glees. So, a dramatic and tragic situation in Prague.
Yes, it's worth recalling that the place this took place, the Jan Palach Square, is named after Jan Palach, who killed himself, burnt himself to death in 1969 in protest at the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia. So it's a place that is associated with protest against the state. And of course, people like me, the absence of facts, it's all speculation. This may be a complete nutcase, although from what we're hearing, it does seem to be a very carefully planned attack. Now, that doesn't rule out him being a nutcase, but it does make it look premeditated. And if it's premeditated, the question is, what is it premeditated to do? And then people like me will say, you know, has this got anything to do with the war in Gaza?
And also its proximity to Christmas. A lot of European cities were on a higher alert of terror because of Christmas markets. And Anthony, the weaponry we can see in the photographs that the man was using looked sophisticated, had long-range sights on it, had a stand at the front. This is the weapon of destruction. This guy clearly knew what he was doing.
I kept.
But it does look like that way. That this was carefully planned, carefully executed. Of course, the perpetrator is dead, so we need to have more details to be absolutely sure. Yes, it is true that in the United States of America, you have campus shootings, you have school shootings, and they're often the result of a grudge that the shooter has either against people teaching him, it always is a him, or fellow students. But again, as you say, this is an area of protest. Jan Palach was a protester against the state. It is an obvious place you would choose if you wanted to make a political statement of protest against the state. And it is also the case that Christmas market attacks, we think in particular of the awful Christmas market attack in Berlin a few years ago. Christmas markets are very vulnerable. And what we're seeing happening in Gaza will undoubtedly be seen as a potential spark for many people who want to make a protest against what the state of Israel is doing. And that would be the initial fear.
And Anthony, we're seeing live shots now from Prague and many emergency vehicles in attendance, as you would imagine, and also dramatic pictures online of students who barricaded themselves into a classroom. The shooter was in the building, obviously in fear of his life, and those pictures of students cowering on a balcony, clearly trying to get out of the sight or the range of the shooter. A random, terrifying event, Anthony.
Random, terrifying, maybe the result of, a nutter wants to take it out on people he's jealous of, somebody protesting against the crisis in his own soul, or a teacher, a professor who he thinks has dissed him. It's a very curious, disturbing case. And in a place you wouldn't normally associate with a violent protest against what was going on in the Middle East. But again, there are many students at Prague University, very fine university. They will come from all over everywhere, including from states directly touched by what they're seeing on their TV screens. And you can slip into violence so quickly. What we're seeing here evokes another thought, perhaps, particularly at Christmas time. But when we see the terrible pictures of suffering in Gaza, this war of revenge, yes, we all understand Israel has the perfect right to defend itself, has the perfect right to take out these Hamas terrorists, but doesn't have a perfect right to kill thousands of innocent people. And as I say, if you feel very aggrieved about something like this and you are deeply disturbed by it, it seems, past history seems to suggest it's one step then to acquiring a weapon. And there are lots of weapons around, not least from Russia. This could, the weapon could easily have come from Russia. It's easy to get hold of this and make a protest in a place of protest. We need to be very mindful that if it is a terror attack, then what has happened in Prague at Christmas could be replicated all over Europe, including in the United Kingdom, where more and more places have Christmas markets. One just down the road from where we live in Oxford. It has become a British thing, and therefore it has become a target too.
OK, Professor Anthony Glees, security expert at the University of Buckingham, thanks for joining us on the show. And let's cross now to Prague and speak to journalist Philip Hawkey. Philip, a dramatic situation. What's the latest from on the ground in Prague?
Well, it's still developing everything. We know at this moment that there are 10 people dead, plus the attacker who has been neutralized, and around 30 people injured. We know that some of them, probably around 9, are critically injured. The rest are moderately and lightly injured. These are the latest numbers provided by officials. I'm right now watching for the live pictures from Prague streets, and as you can see it as well. So it's still ongoing situation. We are not used to have this kind of events in Prague. I have to admit that the Czech Republic is one of the safest countries in the world. So as a journalist during last years, I've covered this kind of stories in the Western Europe, but the Central Europe and the Czech Republic itself was a very safe place. What we know so far that the attacker was alone, that he has been neutralized. There was a tweet by the Minister of Interior just 30 seconds ago that he confirmed that there is no second attacker. What we know at this moment, that according to one of the Czech outlets called Novinky, there is a police raid in the central Bohemia part in one house, that there are heavily armed police officers who are doing some kind of a raid, and according to their information, this raid has been linked to the massacre on the university. So I'm just reading it right now as the information is coming to me. But what I have to say, that just to give you a hint, what we are talking about, the building in the central part of Prague is very close to very famous place for tourists. So just 2 or 3 minutes by walk, there is an old town square with the very famous astronomical clocks. If you walk for 3 minutes to opposite side, there is a Charles Bridge, iconic venue. So that's a very popular place among tourists. What we know so far, that there are still people locked inside the university building. They're hiding themselves. I've read some tweets by students who were inside during the incident, and they wrote that they locked themselves inside their classroom. They put the furniture in front of the door, and they were ready to counter anyone who will try to get inside. So these are informations I have at this moment, but as I said, it's still developing. More and more ambulances are coming to the scene. We've also seen a tweet by the ambulance department from the nearby regions near Prague, that they're trying to help to Prague ambulance, and so more and more emergency vehicles are coming there.
And Philip, we've seen pictures of the gunman, and the weapon he's using appears to be very sophisticated. It's a serious piece of kit with a sniper scope and legs at the front. How easy is it to get hold of weaponry such as that in the area?
Well, I have to say that the Czech Republic concerning the laws to holding a gun is quite strict. So if you compare it, for example, with laws in the United States, we are speaking about completely different world. So yes, people can buy a weapon if they have a license, if they go through some tests. But this kind of a weapon we've seen on the picture, it's absolutely unusual in the Czech Republic. And I have to again repeat, this picture hasn't been confirmed. So we have to wait till the official, for example, police department or Minister of Interior will confirm that this picture we're looking at this moment is the attacker, because we've seen more and more people on the roof of the university building hiding there. So we're not pretty sure if this is the attacker or if it's one of the first police responders. But compare the situation in the Czech Republic to the one in the UK, it's completely normal for police officers to be armed. So every single police officer on the street is armed, comparing to those who are in UK, where you have some kind of a special armed unit, but those who are just on the streets don't have a firearm. They have different kind of arms. So that's a little bit different.
Yeah, Philip, the guy with the gun there, which appears to be the gunman in question, he doesn't look from the photographs that we can see like he would be part of the police or an armed response unit. He looks much more like a civilian. But just to recap, you are saying the information you have locally, 10 dead and 30 injured, 9 seriously injured. Is that the latest information you have, Philip?
Yes, 10 injured plus the attacker. So the total number is 11, but we have to split the victims and the shooter. So yes, there are 10 people killed by a gunman who was neutralized, and there are approximately 30 people injured. 9 of them should be injured seriously and are in a critical condition.
OK, Philip Hawkey, thank you for joining us from Prague and giving us that latest information on this dramatic break-in story. And it's this: people are dead and injured after a reported shooting at a university in Prague. And our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, joins me now in the studio with the latest. And Mark, we have that footage you mentioned there where you can hear the gunshots.
Yes, absolutely. Just before we get to that, though, just to back up and confirm what Philip Hawkey was hearing at his end, the Prague Emergency Service spokesman has now confirmed that the number of dead, which includes the attacker, is 11. 9 seriously wounded out of a total, we believe, of 30 people who have been injured, and that's the ones they know and have got to so far. What is going on at the moment, as you can see from live shots, is the area is being sealed off. There is a systematic search of the university buildings because there are people still barricaded in their classrooms. I think we've got a still image where we can show you of one of the classrooms in the university where the students inside this classroom, hearing the gunshots, realising that the gunman was at large, barricaded. Do we have that still image?
Yeah, we do. We're just going to cut to that now.
Where they got chairs and they got other desks and things like that up against the door. Anyway, look, let's just move on. We've got the shots from...
Yeah, it's on screen now. You can see it. That's the barricading of the screen, and it's by a person called Jacob Weisman, who said, currently stuck inside my classroom in Prague. Shooter is dead, but we are waiting to be evacuated, praying to make it out alive. Locked the door before the shooter tried to open it. That's the image from X Twitter.
You mentioned earlier the shots of gunfire that could be heard in the early stages of this incident, people filming on social media. Let's have a listen to that and look at those images.
Yeah, the gunshots there. So this is from a distance away, and the shots are going off. There must have been many, many shots with that many casualties, fatalities. 10 fatalities, 11 including him, 30 additional injuries, 9 seriously. It must have been a sustained period of gunfire, Mark.
Yeah, and Philip Hawkey, in his interview with you there, was being very cautious about the image of what we believe is the gunman with that long-barrelled weapon. However, we've examined a lot of images from the immediate aftermath and the unfolding events, still and video, where you can see that individual, 2 shots of him in the exact same balcony area where a group of about 10 or 11 students are actually, just perching on the ledge on the other side of the balcony, keeping their heads below to ensure that that gunman doesn't see them. But of course, taking pot shots as he was doing down into the crowd, what may be the case as well, and what will unfold in the minutes and hours ahead, is that this gunman may have gone after the students in the university itself. I think from the reports we're getting from the students about them barricading themselves in their classrooms would seem to indicate that there was shooting activity in the university. Perhaps then he ended up on the roof itself. And again, indications, we'd reported at first the language of the police saying eliminated, which suggested perhaps that they had killed the gunman. There's other reports suggesting the gunman may have taken his own life. So we just need to wait for the fullness of time to get that confirmed. But the gunman, among the 11 people now confirmed to have died, 30 so far that they're saying have been injured, including 9 who have been seriously wounded.
Thank you, Mark, for that. And for further analysis now, let's chat to the former head of National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris Phillips. Chris, thanks for joining us. So we now know 11 dead, including the gunman police say was eliminated. Not sure yet if that was by the police or if that was by his own volition. 30 injured, 9 seriously. Chris, this is a substantial attack.
It is a substantial attack, and clearly he went out planning this with a number of bullets that he obviously had available to him. To have that kind of is pretty, it just shows how intense people. It's unusual in Prague, I think, but of course we've seen these across the world, these types of attacks, and when down across.
OK, Chris, I'm afraid we're having problems with your line, so we're going to cut back to Mark White in the studio. We'll try and get Chris back on. Mark, the detail is just emerging quickly. As we said, 11 dead, including the gunman, 30 injured, 9 seriously. Sophisticated weapon, sustained period of gunfire, barricaded students inside rooms.
Yeah, what you're looking at now are live images across the river there to that historic university building, the arts and other campuses there that just look on to that main square in the old town of Prague. Very popular with tourists, but of course with the thousands of students who attend that university as well. And what we are told is happening now, as you would expect in any mass casualty event with an active shooter like this, is that police are methodically, very slowly and carefully going from room to room in this vast university campus with the multiple buildings around there, and they are clearing them of very scared and frightened people who have remained inside their classrooms and other rooms, who've barricaded themselves inside, who are not yet convinced that the coast is clear, who of course have been told to shelter in place until the authorities can reach them. And what happens is when the police move their way from room to room, they check that for people, making sure that they are all innocent members of the public, and of course looking for any other potential casualties in this event, people that may have been shot and not yet identified, because while the shooter was clearly, from the images that we can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, of the alleged shooter with a long-barreled rifle perched on that balcony, that ledge, shooting down into the square there, it looks as though, from all the reports that are coming out, that this shooter was also targeting people within the university itself. So while that search goes on, very slowly, room by room, it may be some time before we get a full toll on the number of people that have been affected, and of course everyone brought to safety.
OK, let's get more from the intelligence and security expert at the University of Buckingham, Professor Anthony Gleeson. Anthony Gleeson joins us again on the show. Anthony, more detail emerging now. 11 dead in total, including the gunman who was eliminated, according to police. We're not sure if that was by the police or by his own weapon. 30 injured, 9 seriously. Anthony, this is a large-scale, sustained period of firing with multiple casualties, a serious serious incident.
Yeah, very serious, and of course, thoughts have to go out to the people who've been killed, and it is a terrible, terrible carnage. Analysts, though, of course, will immediately want to say, what was the purpose of this? Was this, a lone wolf carrying out an act of terrorism? Was this a madman who'd managed to get hold of this very specialised weaponry? The more we're hearing, though, and the very fact that the police have gone round, we're told, to the place where the shooter lived and are beginning to carry out a search, that fact, added to the fact that the shooter is on a balcony shooting out, with this weapon that allows him to shoot a long distance suggests that the aim was to kill tourists and kill people on this iconic site going to and fro to the Christmas market in Prague, whatever they have there. If the purpose had simply been to shoot students, you wouldn't take a weapon like this in order to do it, and you wouldn't be perched on a balcony looking out. So he's not shooting in, he's shooting out. And that is, again, consistent, for those who want to speculate, with an act of terrorism rather than an act of revenge. And if the cops know where to look for him, look for where he lived, that may also suggest that this is somebody about whom the authorities knew something.
And Anthony, we have heard reports of increased terror alerts across major European cities, of course, as you mentioned, because of the advent of Christmas. Christmas markets, of course, becoming a major target for attacks.
They're a major target. You have lots and lots of people milling around. It's impossible to protect people. And there is a kind of religious aspect of it, that Christmas markets are about Christ, are about Christmas, about Christianity. And the war in Gaza is, of course, at heart a war concerned with Islam and Judaism, two quite different sorts of religion. And in the mind of a sick but well trained killer, this could be a kind of lethal cocktail. You know, add all these things together: Arab, Jew, Christmas, Christmas markets, people enjoying themselves as we want to do in the West. Compare that to the and you get an explosive cocktail in the mind of somebody highly dangerous.
Sorry, we're just getting voiceover there from the Prague Emergency Services. Beg your pardon, Anthony. Please carry on.
Well, I don't know how much you heard, but I think potentially, if this is an act of terrorism, it is prompted by what's going on in Gaza, those awful, awful pictures coming in all the time. The elements there, the Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Christmas, people freely going about their Christmas shopping and looking forward to Christmas Day everywhere in Christian Europe. If you've got a bent and tortured mind, seeing what's going on in Gaza, it becomes a kind of lethal cocktail. So I would not be surprised if students were not the main target, even though we're told, sadly, a number of them have died. But the main target was people going over this iconic site, over the bridge in this iconic site in Prague, sitting ducks for somebody with a weapon of this nature. And of course, the police will need to find out how this weapon was acquired. As I say, I think it's probably not too difficult to think it came from Russia or from southeastern Europe. The former Yugoslavia has lots of weapons floating around there. But this chap was trained, it seems. You don't do this without training. And the way he set himself up on the balcony suggests, again, training. So very dark day for people in Czechoslovakia, dark day for everybody going to a Christmas market, to be frank.
OK, Professor Anthony Glees, thanks for that again. And for more analysis, let's chat now to the former head of National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris Phillips. Chris, thanks for coming back. 30 injured, 9 seriously, 11 dead, including the gunman who was eliminated. The police say, we don't know if that's by the police or by his own gun. Sophisticated weaponry with a long-range scope on. Obviously, the guy was very heavily armed in terms of ammunition. An incredibly serious and dramatic, terrifying incident.
Yeah, and clearly he was out to kill a lot of people with that amount of ammunition and perching himself, as it appears, in a location where he can basically shoot down onto a crowd of people. It's a nightmare scenario for the police.
and the police are still evacuating the building as we speak, Chris. Not thought to be any other accomplice or assailant now, but the aftermath of this will be huge because, of course, there will be a tremendous amount of people inside that university area who will be traumatised. We've seen images of students barricading themselves in for fear of their lives, the gunman in the building, at least they believed, other students cowering on balconies, trying to evade the sights and the sight line of this assailant. A huge police operation now will be coming forward.
Yeah, and of course, we don't know whether they've caught everyone involved in this. That will be part of the investigation, and the very fast investigation will need to go into anyone else that might be involved in this. And of course, you can never tell that one attack doesn't lead to another attack. So the police authorities, I think, all around Europe have been waiting for terrorism attacks, just with what's going on in the world, and whether this is a terrorist attack or it's a single lone shooter that's got other thoughts behind it, we don't know yet. But it is a big concern, and of course, universities.
And Chris has gone down there. Just about to ask him, we cut back to Mark White, who's still in the studio. Interesting what Anthony was saying. If this had been the intent to go and massacre students, I think actually we've got Chris Phillips back now. Chris, I was going to ask you, in terms of the modus operandi of a shooter on a balcony facing downwards, facing outwards, it would seem the primary motive wasn't to eliminate students, but maybe just random people down on the square below.
Yeah, and it's the kind of perfect firing point, isn't it? We saw an attack similar to this in Las Vegas a few years ago, where a gunman decided to take up a high shooting point, and it's very, very difficult for police to counteract that until they get to him. It does appear that the police have managed to deal with this situation, but there's a lot of investigation to go in to how he got the weapon, who he is, who his contacts are, and of course the main one is the rationale.
Yeah, and Chris Phillips, we can see now live photos, pictures of what appear to be emergency services police combing the balconies, the upper balconies of those university buildings. They'll be evacuating the building. Prime Minister has said that process is still in place. Police confirm a large evacuation process ongoing. The police are sweeping those balconies as we speak. Thanks for joining us, Chris Phillips, the former head of National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, for your expert analysis. Now, we're now going to a break, and a reminder of this afternoon's big breaking news. 10 people have been shot dead and 30 have been injured after a mass shooting in Prague. The gunman has been eliminated. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, thank you for being a big part of GB News.
We'd like to wish you and your loved ones a Christmas season full of comfort and joy,
as well as a peaceful and prosperous new year.
From our family
to yours.
We are proud to be your channel.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Here on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Merry Christmas.
Welcome back. It's 4:22, and you join us. A dramatic breaking news story. There's been a mass shooting in Prague, and I'm joined in the studio by our Homeland Security editor, Mark White, for a full update. How many, Mark, do we know are dead, and what's the latest?
11 dead, including the gunman, according to the authorities in Prague, and as many as 30 people injured, 9 of those seriously. What's going on at the moment? You're looking at live pictures, looking down towards Charles University, right in the centre of the Old Town in Prague, is that there is a systematic search taking place of the buildings there to try to identify any more injured, and also to clear some of the classrooms where some of the students and staff have barricaded themselves in to try to keep that gunman out. That gunman was on the roof of this building, on the balcony. He'd got himself a firing position, firing down towards the old square itself. There are still images that we believe to be the gunman in the minutes before he was, according to the police in Prague, eliminated. I don't know if we can bring you the still image there showing the gunman on that building firing a long-barrelled weapon out of the roof area, and as well as that weapon, and the gunman, there were also students who were hiding on the roof of the building itself.
Yeah, and there was another image of a student who'd barricaded themselves into a room using chairs. There's the image, Mark, of the gunman. As you said, a sophisticated piece of weaponry, long-barrelled, sniper scope and a tripod, set up, obviously heavily armed in terms of ammunition. There's the image there, Mark.
Yes, that's just one of the classrooms where students and staff managed to pile anything they could up against the door to try to keep this gunman out. Now, that might indicate, although we're obviously reporting on the fact that he was on the roof of this building shooting out from that ledge, it might indicate that he was also firing into classrooms as he was making his way through the university itself. And we'll only really know in the minutes and hours ahead as the police are able to clear this university room by room whether there are any other people inside the various rooms that might have been caught up in this. The hope would be that there are no more injuries and deaths, and that, you know, we've reached a total of 40 people injured and killed, including the gunman, obviously taking that to 41. But this will be a very protracted operation. It always is, because even though the police are quite convinced themselves that the gunman has been eliminated, they just never know whether there might be other accomplices out there. So they will always, out of an abundance of caution, just very methodically make their way through room to room. We were speaking a little earlier to Philip Horkey, who is a local journalist in Prague. He brought us the very latest.
Philip, a dramatic situation. What's the latest from on the ground in Prague?
Well, it's still developing everything. We know at this moment that there are 10 people dead, plus the attacker who has been neutralized, and around 30 people injured. We know that some of them, probably around 9, are critically injured. The rest are moderately and lightly injured. These are the latest numbers provided by officials. I'm right now watching for the live pictures from Prague streets, and as you can see it as well. So it's still ongoing situation. We are not get used to have this kind of events in Prague. I have to admit that the Czech Republic is one of the safest countries in the world.
So we have more live pictures there. You can see a huge police operation, emergency vehicles in attendance. Those buildings are being swept, we saw moments ago, by police on those balconies, the balcony where the shooter would have been. Police with flashlights clearing those buildings. The situation now is being mocked up afterwards, and there is now reaction from local politicians. Mark White, the mayor of Prague, has just spoken out saying he thought mass shootings were only a US problem.
Well, they're not, you know. I mean, even the Czech Republic have had, you know, some mass shootings. They're not common, but over the years there have been a few incidents. And what the issue that many European countries have, unlike the UK, which is protected to an extent by the fact that we have a sea between us and mainland Europe, is that there are weapons that are out there that fall into the hands of criminals, and others can get a hold of them for the right money. Often they've come from the likes of the Balkans, the conflict in Yugoslavia. Many of them were deactivated after the war and have been sold in shops as souvenirs, taken by criminal gangs and reactivated. It's relatively easy to do that. And then used by criminals and sometimes terrorists as well. What we're told in terms of information that's coming out is that Prague itself is one of these European capitals that is hugely popular with tourists from all over the world that want to go and see, especially the likes of the old city there, which is where this attack has taken place. Lots of tourists in that area in the run-up to Christmas as well. One of the reports we're getting is that a newly married British couple were there in Prague, in the city centre, and had to duck for cover as this gunman was obviously firing from the rooftop there. You can only imagine it must have been an absolutely terrifying situation for these people, because they wouldn't necessarily know in the first instance where the shots are coming from. And you remember going back to that mass shooting in Las Vegas from the hotel there a few years back, where the gunman was in that elevated position shooting out of his room down to the people. I think it was at Caesar's Palace Hotel, down onto the people in the square below. And many people killed and injured in that incident. Well, clearly today as well, sadly, many people have been caught up in this, and at least 10 innocent members of the public killed, another 30 so far that we know about that have been injured.
And the Czech President Peter Pavel has just spoken. He said, "I'm shocked by these events. I would like to express my deep regret and sincere condolences to the families and relatives of the victims claimed by the shooting." OK, we'll bring you updates from Prague as we get them throughout the show. But meanwhile, here's the latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. The headlines this hour, as we've been hearing, the gunman at Prague University in central Prague has been killed after reports of a mass shooting there. 10 people have died and 9 more have been injured. That's according to police reports coming to us. These are the pictures coming to us live from the scene where officers responded to those reports of a shooter at around 2 o'clock UK time this afternoon. We understand that he opened fire from a roof at Jan Palach Square in downtown Prague. The university building has now been fully evacuated. That's after an email was sent to students and staff telling them to stay put and to lock their offices. Well, here in the UK, a murder investigation has been launched after a 4-year-old boy died following a knife attack in East London. The Metropolitan Police said that they received a call at around 11 o'clock last night, raising concerns for the welfare of a child at a property in Montague Road in Hackney. The boy was found with knife injuries and was taken to hospital, where he later died. A 41-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder. An inquest into the death of the asylum seeker aboard the Bibi Stockholm barge has found that he died from compression of the neck caused by hanging. The Albanian asylum seeker was found unresponsive aboard the barge in Dorset on the 12th of December. The coroner said there weren't thought to be any suspicious circumstances surrounding his death. A pre-inquest review is to be introduced in the new year. And that's the latest from the GB Newsroom. You can get more on our website, gbnews.com.
Thank you, Sam. And you join us. There's been a mass shooting in Prague. 11 dead, 30 injured, including 9 seriously. I'm joined in the studio by Mark White, our Homeland Security editor. Mark, a dramatic event. What's the latest?
Well, the operation is still ongoing in the sense that the police are still trying to clear the university there, Charles University, right in the centre of Prague itself. We've seen live images from Prague that show that operation underway with the emergency services surrounding the university and the old square. We've just got a hold of some other video that hopefully we can show you, which is in the while this incident was unfolding and the police who were in the area arriving at the scene, coming under fire, it seems, and taking cover as well, as the gunman was still firing into the crowds below at that time. Let's take a look at that bit of video.
We're just waiting on those shots now, but we can see live shots at the moment. Again, just a huge mop-up area, Mark, of emergency vehicles. We saw footage shortly ago of what appeared to be armed police sweeping and combing those upper balconies to check everything is safe and there are no accomplices.
Yeah, I was talking just a few minutes ago about the mass shootings that have happened from an elevated position, such as the shooting in Las Vegas in 2017. I said Caesar's Palace. That was wrong. My lovely friend Carol Tilsley, who goes to Las Vegas very regularly, pointed out it was the Mandalay Bay hotel there that this 60-year-old gunman was shooting out of and claimed many lives on that occasion because he had a high vantage point and nobody could really see where the gunman was. They were just hearing the shots and running in all directions. And I can only imagine that for a while at least there was a similar situation here where people were hearing gunshots and people were falling injured and fatally injured. But not necessarily knowing where the gunshots were coming from in the first instance. And that's why the police arriving on the scene, of course, themselves could become targets because they're right in the line of fire. So they're taking up positions, but they know they've got to then work their way into the building, in this case the Charles University campus, to get in there and up onto the balcony itself with a view to trying to deal with this gunman. It's unclear at this stage whether the gunman took their own lives. The police initially said that the gunman had been eliminated, but there are other reports suggesting he may have committed suicide.
Okay, and I think we do have those pictures now to show you of police. There we go. Mark, talk us through this.
Yeah, well, let's just have a listen to the video, because I think you can hear gunfire.
No, there's no audio on this. So this is where the police are trying. They've located.
You can see the police officer perched behind some of the street furniture there, taking up a position. That's just what they've got to do. He's obviously aware of where the shooter is, up on that university building. Other police officers with the cover inside the building there at the top of the steps, moving forward, pushing into the building as they're trained to do, and then up the steps towards where the gunman is. But it was clear even at that stage, as fully kitted and fully armed police personnel were arriving, the gunman was still firing. Now, although in the Czech Republic, like many European countries, you will have armed police officers, they still, in responding to an incident where you have a well-armed gunman, would require on specialist weapons and tactic teams, they call them in America the SWAT teams, that would come in and would push up to try to deal with these gunmen themselves.
And pictures emerging now of the evacuation of the Faculty of Arts at that university building. Students appear to be being marched out with their hands on their heads, because I'm assuming at this point, Mark, the police were making sure that nobody who's inside the building will be connected to this attack, and therefore they're marching them all out in case they could be linked to it.
Yeah, it's standard procedure. This is what they will do, because until these people have been questioned, then the police don't know whether they may be a suspect, someone linked to a suspect. Of course, it's undignified for people, but, they understand. Yeah. At the end of the day, the police have got to approach this with an abundance of caution, and being asked to put your hands on your head, a small price to pay to be able to be led to safety by these armed police. That operation is still going on. We're looking again at live pictures out there. You see police, some of them with torches there. So what's happening is, as they get into the many rooms, it's a big old university, so with lots of different areas and faculties within the university, each with dozens of classrooms and administrative rooms and other buildings. They all need to be cleared one at a time, slowly but surely. And as they do that, they are finding more people who have had the good sense, of course, to hide in place, as they were told to do, until the coast is clear, until they are reached by the emergency services, by those armed police teams. So as they do that, they're taken out. So we will still see from time to time groups of people being brought out with their hands on their head. They're taken to a safe area where they're looked after by the police, where they're just, questioned, a cursory sort of search and questioning of those individuals, just to make sure they're okay, that they're not a threat to anyone else. And then they're taken actually to a holding area where they can be properly assessed and looked after, because they've gone through a very traumatic ordeal.
And there'll be this entire area now, Mark, will be a crime scene with this amount of ammunition and projectiles fired off, 30 injured, 10 dead, 11 including the gunman. That's a lot of ammunition has been let off over a sustained period of time. And of course, this entire area now, that we're trying to chart where those bullets landed, and the entire area will be hugely combed over and closed off for a long time.
Yeah, that's the slow time operation that we will get into. We're still very much in the kind of fast time operation at the moment, because, as I say, they just have to make sure that all of the buildings are safe and that all of the injured are accounted for. So, I mean, I say fast time, it's a methodical search, but it's still part of this initial emergency response where you have all of the emergency services, the paramedics, fire brigade and the police, of course, all rushing to help those casualties that are immediately in front of them. But then slightly slower time, you will get the big search operation that's now underway. Then when the area is completely safe, can the forensic teams, you know, the teams that you see clad from head to toe in the white coveralls, wearing the face masks and their head covered as well, so as not to contaminate the scene, will go through every single square inch of that crime scene to recover bullets, to take photographs of where injured and fatally injured people fell, to also, of course, photograph the path and that the gunman took. And that they'll also be assisted while that physical search is taking place by the other detectives who will be, as we speak, sifting through all of the information they have in the background of this gunman. Who was he? Who could he be connected to? Is there a history of violence and threats that were made by this individual? What we will see, if it's not already happened, I suspect it has already happened, is that properties immediately linked to this gunman are being surrounded, raided, checked for anything that he might have had there. There may be other weapons there. There may be a dossier, some kind of a statement that this person has made in their own home. There may be other family members or friends of this person that might know themselves what this person was up to. Or, you know, sometimes it's not uncommon for someone, if they've had some kind of an episode, to do harm to loved ones, then to move out and then to do harm to other people in another location. So all of that being factored in by the police as they continue now this proactive investigation into who exactly this person was and what on earth motivated them to carry out this most horrific of events.
Thank you, Mark. And if you're just joining us, a reminder of this afternoon's big breaking news story. 10 people have been shot dead and 30 have been injured after a mass shooting in Prague. The gunman has been eliminated. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. It's 4:46. You're watching or listening to Martin Daubney on GB News. Let's get the very latest now from Prague, where a gunman has killed 10 people. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is still with me in the studio. Mark, 11 dead, including the gunman, 30 injured, 9 seriously. What's the latest?
Yeah, live and continuing coverage here on GB News of this unfolding event, which is still an active scene with armed police going through this ancient university in the old city in Prague, going very carefully from room to room. You can see the video here as the people up on a ledge, about a dozen or maybe just under a dozen students hiding, a police officer taking cover behind some of the street furniture there, as at this point the gunman was still active, shooting down into the square or to the people below, as more in the way of specialist firearms officers arrived at the scene. You can see them on the ledge there, just perching, trying to keep their heads down out of sight in the hope that the gunman wouldn't spot them there. Absolutely terrifying, of course, for them, in the most precarious position imaginable. Hopefully they were all right. We don't know what happened to these people. We know that at this stage the gunman has, in the words of the police in Prague, been eliminated. We had initially thought perhaps he'd been shot by the police. There are other indications suggesting he may have taken his own life. That kind of information will come out in the fullness of time. What we can tell you as we now continue to look at live shots of Prague there, courtesy of our friends in the Czech Republic, is that this is still very much an active situation, because we don't know, although we've got an indication of 30 people injured in addition to the 11 deaths, including the gunman, we don't know whether that injury toll and indeed the death toll might rise in the minutes and hours ahead, because we won't know until they get through the classrooms themselves. We will be bringing you very shortly some dramatic video inside one of the classrooms, where you can see that there are students who are hiding in the classroom itself, and are also, you can hear the gunfire in the building. If we have that. I
think we've got that now.
Let's listen to that. have had some mass shootings in the past, as pretty much every country has. But what they are used to, what they do see, are the images that come out of the United States on an almost daily basis of the school shootings and other mass shootings there. And they know about the drills that these students have to go through in the US to keep themselves safe. And that's always the advice. Shelter in place, barricade yourself in if possible, contact the emergency services, let them know where you are. So they will have done exactly that. And we know that from, of course, that video there, from the other still images that have been coming out and the reports all over social media now, that lots of students heeded that good advice and were able to do that. And that probably saved a lot more in the way of death and injuries from those students.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And let's get more on this now by speaking to the founder of Prague Morning, Massimo Paralisi. Thank you for joining us, Massimo. A dramatic moment, huge moment. 11 dead, including the gunman, 30 injured, 9 seriously. The mayor of Prague has spoken out recently saying this is not the kind of thing that happens in Europe, but now it has. Can you explain to us the mood on the ground in Prague?
Yeah, well, basically you said majority of information so far, but I'm just reading the latest updates from Czech sources. Around 200 students have been evacuated from the faculty, and the government will meet tonight at 9 p.m. for an emergency meeting. I'm looking for other latest information. It is said that the shooter probably killed his father this morning. It is not confirmed 100%, but it's a news that it's circulating across all the Czech medias. He's not from Prague. From what we know at the moment, the shooter is Czech, but
we seem to have lost Massimo.
That's the latest information from here, from Prague.
So, Massimo, would you mind repeating that for us? You claim the gunman had murdered his father earlier?
Yeah, they say, several Czech newspapers say that this morning he supposedly he killed his father in, I'm telling you in a second, in outside of Prague. In the city, it's called Houston. Try to find, but it happened around 9 in the morning, and then he moved to Prague.
Okay.
Circulating, yeah.
Okay, Massimo Paralisi, founder of Prague Morning, thank you for that update. Mark, you said earlier often there can be a kind of family incident beforehand. Massimo there saying that newspapers in Prague have stated that the gunman killed his father earlier in the day and then appears to have gone on a rampage in central Prague.
Yes, sadly, this is what we sometimes see when people, for whatever reason, have an episode and decide to indulge in, this kind of horrific event, that sometimes they target those closest to them, family members at their own home, and then go out to target wider people. We know that apparently he had created, according to reports, a Telegram channel saying that he wanted to carry out a deadly shooting. He's been identified, but I won't give that name, so it'll come from any official source. But the police were hunting him after this shooting, this murder of his father in a town outside Prague. And he had indicated that he wanted to carry on shooting people and also to emulate a killer that had carried out a similar attack in Russia in 23.
OK, Mark White, thank you for that. Of course, we'll have lots more on this afternoon's big breaking news. 10 people have been shot dead and 30 have been injured in a mass shooting in Prague. The gunman has also been eliminated. We'll have more on that. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, Alex Berkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. As we go through the run-up to Christmas, there will be some rain around for most of us and also a bit of snow over the higher ground of Scotland. It's also looking windy, although the strongest winds we've seen so far today are starting to ease with the low pressure system clearing away towards the east. It is still going to be blustery though as we go through the rest of today. Some showers to watch out for, could be heavy, could see some hail, some thunder and also some sleet or snow, bringing some ice risks across parts of Scotland, particularly across Shetland. However, as we go through the night, some clear skies towards the east, subsiding as we see increasing amounts of cloud and some rain pushing in. And with those strong winds and the cloud, temperatures not dropping much for most of us. Some places in the south holding up in double figures. A bit chillier further north across parts of Scotland. A touch of frost here as we go through Friday morning, and also some further sleet or snow possible over modest higher ground. Outbreaks of rain for many of us through Friday itself, and it is looking like a generally cloudy day, but some bright skies, perhaps even a bit of sunshine developing in parts of the southwest in the afternoon. Temperatures for many will be a nudge down compared to today, but still relatively mild for the time of year in the south, but feeling colder in those strong winds. Saturday then gets off to a wet start across northern parts, some heavy rain building up across western parts of Scotland in particular. Drier further south, there are a few spots of rain and staying pretty cloudy. Further rain to come then as we go through Christmas Eve and Christmas Day itself, and it is going to be windy at times too. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News. I'm Martin Daubney. It's 5 o'clock. Our big story today, a gunman has killed at least 10 people in a mass shooting in Prague. 30 others have been injured. Police say the gunman has been eliminated. I have the full story from the Czech Republic. But first, here are your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Sam Francis in the GB newsroom. The top story this hour, as we've been hearing, the gunman at that Prague University building has been killed after reports of a mass shooting there. More than 10 people have died and 9 more have been seriously injured, according to police reports. And in the last few minutes, we're also hearing that the gunman's father was found dead earlier today. Officers responded to reports of a shooting at 2 o'clock UK time this afternoon. We understand he opened fire from a roof in downtown Prague. The entire university building has now been evacuated. That's after an email was sent earlier to students and staff telling them to stay put and to lock their offices. Here in the UK, a murder investigation has been launched after a 4-year-old boy died following a knife attack in East London. The Metropolitan Police said they received a call just before 11 o'clock last night, raising concerns for the welfare of a child at a property in Hackney. The boy was found with knife injuries and was taken to hospital, where he later died. A 41-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder. An inquest into the death of the asylum seeker aboard the Bibi Stockholm barge has found that he died from compression of the neck caused by hanging. The Albanian asylum seeker was found unresponsive aboard the barge in Dorset on the 12th of December. The coroner said there weren't thought to be any suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of the 27-year-old, and a pre-inquest review is to be held on the 9th of July next year. The Labour leader says there's a real and constant threat to Europe from Russia as he visits the British troops in Estonia. Sir Keir Starmer says that he has been watching training sessions on a NATO base bordering with Russia. He said he's there to show his commitment to the military alliance and thanked servicemen and women for their courage, integrity, their loyalty and professionalism. Sir Keir warned that the West must not lose sight of Moscow's threat to Europe.
I'm here to say thank you to our troops here in Estonia, who are based on the border pretty much with Russia, for the work they're doing, keeping us safe, the work they're doing for NATO, but also to reaffirm our unshakable commitment for NATO and our unshakable commitment to Ukraine, and to remind everybody that Russia is a constant threat. Not just now, but into the future.
Well, in sport, the EU's top court has ruled that FIFA and UEFA acted illegally in blocking the creation of the European Super League. The proposed league, involving 12 of Europe's biggest clubs, including 6 English teams, was announced in April 2021, but it collapsed shortly afterwards. Now, a judge has ruled that UEFA blocking the formation of such a competition is contrary to EU law. The court said both FIFA and UEFA are abusing their dominant position in the sport. It also said the ruling does not mean that such a competition as the Super League must necessarily be approved in future. Meanwhile, Home Secretary James Cleverly said the government is deeply uncomfortable with the European Super League.
We've made it clear that
I mean, football is fundamentally a community sport. We've got one of the most competitive leagues in the world, and it's great because it is competitive. We were deeply uncomfortable with the breakaway league. The fans told us they didn't want a breakaway league. The fans told us they wanted us to take action, so we have taken action. We'll continue to do so to make sure that fan-led review and the findings that have come out of it are implemented and will be underpinned through legislation.
Winds of up to 115 miles an hour are battering parts of the UK as Storm Pia brings chaos to pre-Christmas travel. One man's been taken to hospital after a tree fell on his car in Derbyshire. Meanwhile, British Airways flights have been disrupted and National Rail is reporting that routes across Scotland and parts of England and Wales are also affected. It comes as a yellow weather warning is in place in Scotland until 9 o'clock this evening. It also covers Belfast, Newcastle and Manchester. And there's more disruption to the Christmas getaway, with the Euro tunnel services temporarily suspended due to unexpected strikes by French staff. At least 24 Eurostar trains have been cancelled. The Eurotunnel website issued an apology, saying further updates will be provided shortly. The disruptions affecting journeys to and from London, threatening Christmas plans for thousands of travellers. This is GB News across the UK. We're on your TV, in your car, digital radio and on your smart speaker. Now, though, more from Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's get the very latest from Prague, where a gunman, we now understand, has killed more than 15 people. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is still with me. Now, Mark, I believe there's a press conference at present, but fresh details emerging.
Yeah, as we speak, you can see the images there of the police chief in Prague, surrounded by other officials, giving the very latest details. He has confirmed that more than 15 people are dead, including the gunman, after the shooting at the Charles University at the Faculty of Arts. He has also confirmed that the alleged gunman was a student at the Faculty of Arts as well. There are reports that he had been posting on social media in the last day or so about his desire to carry out a mass shooting, that he was fed up, that he was hated by people and that he hated people in return. The police chief has also confirmed that the gunman's father was found dead earlier this morning and that there was a search ongoing for the gunman in the aftermath of the discovery of this man's body. We now know, of course, that this gunman went on to go to the Faculty of Arts, where he was a student, and to open fire within that university campus and out of the university campus from a position on the rooftop there, where he rested an automatic weapon, a long-barreled weapon, that he was firing down into the streets below. So some very significant detail coming out from the chief of police there in Prague in the early hours, really, of this incident. It only happened just a few hours ago. The police chief confirming that the body of the gunman was found within the Faculty of Arts building. There were reports that this gunman had taken his own life. That would appear to be indicative of what the chief of police is saying there. He's not saying that his officers killed this individual, but simply that his body was found within the Faculty of Arts itself. We can hopefully show you, as we continue to monitor the police press conference for any more lines that might come out, some video that was taken from inside one of the classrooms within the university, within the Faculty of Arts, where you can quite clearly hear a gunshot ringing out as those students were barricaded into that classroom itself. Let's have a look at that footage. clearly absolutely terrifying for those students within that faculty building, but they did exactly what they're supposed to do. They're not used to mass shootings in the Czech Republic. Many European countries don't see what they see unfolding in the US, but they've seen, of course, many of these mass shootings in the US, and they're aware of that shelter-in-place rule, to barricade yourself into a place of safety, try to keep a gunman from entering the room that you're in, and that's exactly what many of those students and teachers did within that university itself, and that may well have saved more lives. But very disturbing news coming out from the police chief there, as he's confirming to the press in the centre of Prague that more than 15 people have died, including the gunman. At this stage, the injury toll is at 30. We've had no indication from the police chief that there are any more injured than that, but 9 of those who were injured were reported to be in a serious condition.
OK, thanks, Mark. Now we can speak to retired Metropolitan Police Officer Norman Brennan. Norman, thanks for joining us. More than 15 dead now. The gunman was a student at the Faculty of Arts at the university there in Prague. Earlier on, murdered his father, then gone on a rampage. Very heavily armed, 30 injured, 9 seriously. That's the current toll, Norman. A huge and significant police operation will now ensue.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we don't know whether it's a terrorist attack or not. But I think, Martin, it's a timely reminder of the anger and hatred around the world, especially with the war in Ukraine and over in Israel and Hamas, and the demonstrations we've seen on London. And more worrying is how many people are entering this country. Fortunately, very few people can get hold of firearms. If you're a top drawer criminal or you're in a criminal gang, there is a chance that you can get a hold of a firearm. But in general, you get hold of knives. You use vehicles. Well, we all know that we have fortuitously not been attacked like France, Paris, and all these European countries. But it only takes one person to enter this country with a weapon such as the one that we've seen used this afternoon, and devastation can be caused on the streets of Britain. Now, if we don't know who's coming into this country or who self-radicalises that is in this country that already flies below the radar, this could happen in Britain at any time. And it's only for the grace of God we haven't had such attacks apart from in Daubney and Hungerford, which were several decades ago. But when we look over the waters, I think it's about time that we should start looking at our own land and seeing how safe we really are.
Okay, thank you, Norman. I need to cut back now to Mark White. Mark, I believe we have some fresh details emerging.
Yeah, we'll come back to you in a second, Norman, but just want to bring the very latest. On the injury total, we're told that 24 people are hurt. So that might be an indicator, because we were told before that 30 people have been wounded. The fact that the number of dead has risen to 15 may be an indication that actually those seriously injured, some of those at least, have died. So 24 injured now and 15 have been killed, which includes the gunman. One important confirmation from the police chief giving this news conference: the mass shooting, he said, is not linked to international terrorism. The gunman was 24 years old and he came from a village 13 miles outside Prague. Now, the police confirmed as well that the suspect's father was found dead at that house in this village 13 miles from Prague this morning. So some important new bits of information. If we get any more, we'll interrupt you again, Norman. Sorry about that.
And Norman, bringing you back in now, the mayor of Prague was talking about this isn't the kind of thing that we're used to, but our world is changing. We live in a world where individual shooters, for reasons we do not know are entirely clear, can go on a spree. And the worst thing is that this cannot be solved preventatively. So So, Norman, clearly here the mayor saying these random events cannot be predicted, they cannot be controlled, and as you alluded to earlier, Norman, that means it could happen anywhere, including in Britain.
It absolutely can't be predicted. MI5 and MI6 in Britain, they say many terrorist attacks. Well, we're not necessarily saying this is a terrorist attack, but as the mayor over at Prague says, that supposing somebody hates us so much in Britain that flies below the radar from the police, MI5, MI6, that's a British national that was under no suspicion whatsoever, all they have to do is to get hold of a weapon such as the one used over in Prague and look at the devastation that they could cause. It could be London, it could be Oxford, Liverpool, Manchester. They only have to choose their area, and what is there that we can do to stop them? And unfortunately, fate sometimes is a part of life.
OK, Norman Brennan, we'll come back to this story. Thanks for joining us on the show. We'll have lots more from Prague very shortly, but now to news that thousands of passengers have been left stranded at Euston and St Pancras stations. Last-minute Eurostar strikes and cancelled trains have caused mass disruption at two of London's busiest train stations. And joining me now from St Pancras station is GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, the Christmas getaway is starting, and this has thrown a spanner in the works.
That's right, on one of the busiest travel days of the year, tens of thousands of journeys have been disrupted this afternoon and this evening out of London. Earlier today, striking action by French staff meant that some 25 Eurostar services going out of St Pancras International have been cancelled. That disruption expected to continue until 7 p.m, although Eurostar have said that people on several services after that time can anticipate some disruption. Here at King's Cross, there have also been significant disruptions to the East Coast Main Line. LNER, the service there, releasing footage of a tree that had collapsed on lines near Doncaster, causing significant disruption, which it expects to be relieved after about 5:30 p.m. However, there are thousands of people queuing inside this ticket hall here. And then just down the road at Euston, significant disruption to the West Coast Main Line. Avanti West Coast, the service provider there, saying that a tree had fallen down in the Hemel Hempstead area due to those winds by Storm Pia, up to 115 miles per hour recorded by the Met Office earlier today, beating the highs of 80 recorded earlier in the afternoon. So disruption expected to clear later this evening, but the departure boards at both stations still showing significant disruption. And if you're hoping to drive home for Christmas with this disruption on the rails, there have also been reports of some roads being blocked off in Yorkshire due to issues there with the wind, and some 40,000 homes in Yorkshire losing power due to the impact of this storm. Yellow weather warnings have been issued throughout the UK due to ice and snow, and we are anticipating more disruption to rail and roads later this evening.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, for that update. Travel chaos at Euston and St Pancras. Now, a reminder of this afternoon's big breaking news story. More than 15 people have been killed after a mass shooting in Prague. Police say the gunman has been eliminated. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
We're late. Get up!
This Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, wake up with GB News.
For the finest festive start to your Christmas for you and the whole family.
Christmas breakfast on GB News, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day from 6 a.m.
I got you this.
Oh, good. Okay, I got you a little something.
Oh, I'm sure it's nice.
Welcome back, 5:21. Let's get the very latest now from Prague, where a gunman has killed more than 15 people. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, is still with me in the studio. So, Mark, lots and lots of details have emerged in the past few minutes. What's the latest?
Yeah, police chief in Prague giving us some important new information, and chief amongst that was the fact that that death toll has now risen to 15 people, including the gunman. And that gunman, according to the police in Prague, was a 24-year-old student from the Faculty of Arts, from the very building that he opened fire on earlier this afternoon. You can see the police presence around that building, which is in the old town in the centre of Prague. It remains sealed off this evening as the police continue their room-to-room search. Now, they're telling us that 24 people, Martin, have been injured. Earlier, that was at 30. But I think an indication that the death toll has risen and the number of injured has decreased probably indicates that those 9 seriously injured, some of them have now succumbed to their injuries. We can show you some video actually from one of the classrooms within the University Faculty of Arts where the gunman was opening fire. Students and staff within one of the classrooms had the good sense to barricade themselves in as the gunshots were ringing out. Let's take a listen to this. You can quite clearly hear that. Yeah, I mean, clearly, absolutely terrifying, and they can do nothing other than keep themselves locked in that room. There is another still image that we've got that shows actually chairs, tables and other bits of furniture that has been put up against the door in one of the classrooms as well there. Just an indication, I think, which is, you know, it's sad in one way that it's indicative of this is what's got to be uppermost in the thinking of people in crowded places these days, but good that people seem to know what to do. Because they've seen so many of these mass shootings in the US, they know that, you know, the best thing to do is shelter in place, try and barricade yourself into a room to stop the gunman getting to you, because you know, if they try a door, they can't get through the door, they usually move on to a next room. That tends to be the pattern here. But what we are still waiting to find out, and what was not clear from that press conference with the police chief, is whether the gunman, a student at the Faculty of Arts himself, opened fire within the university or fired from the university. The indications would seem to suggest that he must have been firing within the university as well. And that confirmation, as I say, that this was a student there, 24 years old, who had been posting on social media saying that he hated everybody, that everybody hated him, that he wanted to carry out a mass shooting and emulate a number of other mass shootings that had taken place in recent weeks, including one in Russia.
And we also spoke to a journalist in Prague on the show earlier, Mark, who confirmed that the gunman had earlier in the day murdered his own father.
Yes, this, again, more information that came out from the police chief's news conference confirming that the gunman lived in a village. That village was just 21 kilometres, 13 miles outside Prague, and it was at that location that police found the body of this gunman's father this morning, and then there was a very sustained manhunt looking for this gunman, of course, who then turned up at the university opening fire.
And we have some latest live pictures. There we go. There's a large crowd gathering in Prague. Mark, I assume that either as a mark of solidarity or sheer curiosity, but this is a huge, huge area and an active crime scene now, Mark.
Yes, and what is happening, because, as I said to you over the last couple of hours, the operation is still underway in terms of trying to clear those massive buildings, those faculties with there are dozens and dozens of classrooms and other rooms, facilities within the faculty that have to be cleared slowly but surely. As they do that, then you will have people within the building being brought out. We've seen other images of them being escorted out with their hands on their heads. It's a bit undignified, maybe a bit frightening for them, but it's a small price to pay, because the police at the end of the day don't know who is a threat and who isn't. So it's standard procedure to take them out in single file with their hands on top of their heads, out to where other police officers will be waiting that just can quickly assess who they are, whether they're armed. They're quickly patted down to make sure that they're not a threat, and then they're given proper care and attention, medical attention, interviewed properly in the fullness of time as to what they saw and heard and what they might know about the gunman. As I say, according to the police, he was a student at that university.
And we also have some footage from around about a couple of hours ago when this shooting started of people simply fleeing for their lives. Obviously, the shooter was up on the balcony at this time, Mark. There we go, shooting downwards, causing mass panic.
Yeah, so you had mass panic in the square below with people running, the police vehicles entering the scene by themselves, becoming, getting into the line of fire. You can see the hundreds, thousands probably of people that were in that area just running, trying to get to safety, because this gunman was as we know, on the rooftop in an elevated position, able to pick out people below which is what he was doing over a sustained period of time. So people had to get out of the way. When the police arrived, they were in the line of fire as well. There was other images showing those police officers taking up covering positions behind street furniture, in and out of the way off the line of fire of this gunman, who we can see from this still image with his long-barreled weapon. The two rests at the end of that long-barreled weapon to allow him to perch the weapon on the end there. And this remarkable image showing about a dozen or so students from the Faculty of Arts who climbed out onto a ledge, ducking below that to get out of the line of fire in the hope that the gunman doesn't see them. Hopefully they were all safe, but it must have been utterly terrifying for them as this incident was unfolding.
And the type of weaponry on display there, Morg, sophisticated, heavy-duty, sniper scope, the amount of people hurt, the amount of people killed, indicative of a serious amount of ammunition. Here's a gunman who went heavily prepared, heavily armed, and caused absolute chaos.
There is no doubt that this man had murder as his intention when he set out today, with that weapon, with the ammunition, as you say, and with the posts that had been put on the Telegram account and on social media saying how much he hated his fellow students, how much they hated him, and the fact that he wanted to commit mass murder, that he was inspired by a number of recent mass shootings, one of them just this month in Russia as well, involving a young child. So that apparently, to some extent at least, was an inspiration for him. Quite what it was that sent him over the edge, that caused him to murder his father and then to try and open fire and take all these lives, we don't know. But the police still there in this historic part of Prague at the moment, as this remains an active crime scene, as they try to account for everybody that was in that university campus.
OK, Mark White, thank you for bringing us up to speed. And of course, we'll bring you all the updates from Prague as and when we get them. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you. Good evening. The headlines from the GB newsroom. Emergency services in Prague say more than 14 people have been killed in a mass shooting at a Prague university. Dozens more are wounded. The gunman's body has also been found in the area. Czech police are reporting the suspect's father was also found dead earlier today. Officers responded to reports of a shooter at around 2 o'clock UK time this afternoon. We understand he opened fire from a roof in downtown Prague. Reports say the shooter was a student at the Faculty of Arts at Charles University. And in the last few moments, we've heard the police in Prague are saying at this stage it's not expected to be a terrorist incident. Here in the UK, a murder investigation has been launched after a 4-year-old boy died following a knife attack in East London. The Metropolitan Police say they received a call just before 11 o'clock last night, raising concerns for the welfare of a child at a property in Hackney. The boy was found with knife injuries and was taken to hospital, where he later died. A 41-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder. An inquest into the death of the asylum seeker aboard the Bibi Stockholm barge has found that he died from compression of the neck caused by hanging. The Albanian asylum seeker was found unresponsive aboard the barge on the 12th of December. The coroner said there weren't thought to be any suspicious circumstances surrounding the death of the 27-year-old. A pre-inquest review is to be held in July next year. And there's more travel disruption for the Christmas getaway, with all Eurotunnel services temporarily suspended. That's due to unexpected strikes by French staff. At least 24 Eurostar trains have been cancelled, and the Eurotunnel website has issued an apology, adding further updates will be provided shortly. The disruption is affecting journeys to and from London, threatening the Christmas plans for thousands of travellers. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
For a valuable legacy your family can own, gold coins will always shine bright. Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, here's a quick look at the markets today. The pound will buy you $1.2671 and €1.1533. The price of gold, £1,612.49 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is closed at 7,694 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Sam. Now let's get the very latest from Prague, where a gunman has killed at least 15 people. Now, Home and Security Editor Mark White is still with me in the studio. Mark, obviously a very traumatic event, but some good news. A British couple who were taking their honeymoon in the city, caught in the crossfire, as it were. What's their story?
Well, they're safe, which is good. We were saying before what, you know, a honeypot, if you like, Prague is for people from all around the world. It's an absolutely beautiful city, especially in the old city, and people will go there. Well, this couple from Merton in Surrey, Tom Lees and his wife Rachel, just newly married, had gone to Prague for their honeymoon. They were in a restaurant in the museum, in a bar there, just having a drink, when this police officer burst in, shouting instructions in Czech to everyone to get down, to stay in place because of the situation outside. Now, he, of course, Tom Lees, didn't know what this police officer was saying as he was speaking in Czech, so asked him to speak in English, and the officer then was able to tell them that there was an active shooter situation and they should shelter in place. That's what they did. They're safe, but understandably, of course, very shaken by what has happened here.
And interesting, they were saying the staff were very calm. They turned off all the lights and urged us to stay calm. The restaurant was relatively quiet. The policeman left urgently, and we stood in the corner of the restaurant with everyone else being so calm. It didn't seem real to me, said Mr. Lees. But it seems, on that evidence, handled very, very well, kept them calm and kept them safe inside.
Yes, absolutely. And we can now confirm that, perhaps no surprise, that the attack at Charles University, that the arts faculty there is the worst fatal shooting since Czech independence some 30 years ago. The most recent shooting before this was in 2019 at a hospital in Ostrava when a man opened fire in a trauma clinic waiting room and killed 4 people. So this massively more significant in terms of the number of people who were affected. As we mentioned before, the suspect, now dead, was 24 years old and a student at the faculty. We're told that his lifeless body was found in the Faculty of Arts building, so an indication from the police that they didn't shoot him, that they discovered the man's body, which would appear to then corroborate the other multiple reports that we're getting that actually this gunman had taken his own life. We are told that this gunman began shooting on the 4th floor of the Faculty of Arts building, that students in the faculty, in common with students across Europe, were about to end their academic semester tomorrow, and ahead of that were there, you know, saying their goodbyes and just having that's kind of leisurely Christmas Day, really festive end of semester period there before they were about to split up for the festive period. We're told that 200 students were moved quickly to safety over the road to a contemporary arts gallery building that was across the road. Hundreds of others sheltered in place, of course, from the video that we were showing you in their classrooms.
And there's a fresh line coming out here, a director of a gallery at a concert hall across the square, saying, I saw a young person on the gallery who had some weapon in his hand, like an automatic weapon, and shooting towards the mains bridge, repeatedly with some interruptions. And then I saw, as he shot, put his hands up and threw the weapon down on the street. It lay there on the pedestrian crossing. So that may add fresh information whether he took his own life or whether he was taken down by the police. This would seem to indicate maybe the police took him down after he dropped his own weapon, if this can be corroborated.
Well, it's possible, and I think, as I said to you a few hours ago now, stories evolve, and all we can do is honestly bring the information that we have to hand, and that was initial indication from the police that the suspect had been eliminated. We took that to mean the police had shot him. Then there were reports coming out saying that they believed the gunman had taken his own life, and from what the police chief said was that his lifeless body was found within the Faculty of Arts, perhaps corroborated the suggestion that he took his own life. But it's perfectly possible that those firearms officers who would have been on site and taking up positions were able to take the gunman out. We'll know in the hours ahead.
And it's worth repeating, the Interior Minister has told reporters there is no indication at this time that this has any link to international terrorism.
Yeah, the police quite explicit about that. At this stage, it appears to be an act of vengeance of some kind, a person who has flipped, who has decided to kill his own father for whatever reason, who's been posting about how much he hated his fellow students and who wanted to commit mass murder. Clearly, other news agencies have been speaking to people in Prague as well, getting reactions from people. A local TV reporter called Katerina Vodvarkova from a foreign news channel called TV Nova, near the site of the attack when it occurred, and she said that everyone is in shock. She went on to say, personally, I never experienced anything like this in Prague. I watched students being evacuated and I had tears in my eyes that they had to witness this, she said. She said, this is the busiest season for Prague. Not surprising, as I say, it is a beautiful European city that people would be attracted to, especially at Christmas. She said, we've had our most famous Christmas market, and it brings breaks my heart, she says, that visitors here had to witness this and were caught up in the terrible mass shooting as this gunman from that high vantage point there opened fire on the thousands of people below.
And as the news percolates globally, Mark, world leaders are commenting. Zelensky in Ukraine says shocking reports of tragic events in Prague. Innocent people were killed and injured. My sincere condolences to the families of the victims. I wish those injured a speedy recovery. And Emmanuel Macron, of course, President of France, expressing solidarity with victims. And if you're just joining us, a reminder of this afternoon's big breaking news story. At least 15 people have been killed after a mass shooting in Prague. Police say the gunman has been eliminated. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:46. You're watching Martin Daubney on GB News. And now let's get the very latest from Prague, where a gunman has killed at least 15 people. And our Homeland Security editor, Mark White, is still with me in the studio. So, Mark, for the benefit of those joining us late, can we have a recap of this horrific day in Prague?
Yeah, we had a very important update from the police in Prague there. They went into quite a bit of detail about the shooting, the fact that the suspect was 24 years old. He was himself a student at the Faculty of Arts at Charles University in the Old Town in Prague, an ancient university, well regarded, and that suspect is among the dead. His lifeless body, the police say, was found within the Faculty of Arts. What's unclear this time, Martin, is whether the gunman took his own life or whether he was taken out by the armed police who got to the scene and were obviously able to pinpoint where this man was on the roof of the building that you're looking at the moment. That's looking down towards the Faculty of Art. And as the police adopted their covering positions there, because they were right in the line of fire themselves as they arrived on the scene in this central square overlooking the university. Other students were actually perched very precariously out on a ledge. Incredible images of about a dozen students who clearly felt they had nowhere else to go than to climb over and onto the ledge itself and then just duck down behind the ledge to try to avoid the gunman who was perched further down that balcony, firing down onto the street below. Now, according to the police chief, Martin, he said that the gunman opened fire, initially started firing on the 4th floor of the Faculty of Arts campus. What we don't know is whether he actually targeted actively any of the classrooms within the faculty or whether he used, because it may have been the balcony he was on looked probably about the 4th floor. It was, you know, it was a few floors up, certainly. It may be that he just used a position, an area he knew well, being a student there, to get a high-level position, a vantage point to shoot down into the square.
And 2 key points that came out, the Czech Interior Minister saying there is no indication that this crime has any link to international terrorism. But a salient point that came out from the police chief, Mark, was earlier in the day, the gunman had murdered his own father.
Yeah, the gunman lived in a village which is, we're told, about 13 miles outside Prague, 21 kilometres outside Prague. And it was at that location this morning that the body of the gunman's father was discovered in that property that they lived in. And then it was a very detailed manhunt for this gunman, who had also then been posting on social media of his desire to carry out a mass shooting. The fact, he said, that he'd been inspired by a number of recent mass shootings, that was actually confirmed by the police chief in the news conference that he gave, that this gunman had said he had been inspired by recent mass shooting events, in particular one in Russia just earlier this month, in which a young girl was caught up in that shooting as well. So the gunman at that point had gone to the university. Clearly, the police responded quickly. Now, in the Czech Republic, like many European countries, you'll have armed officers, but usually most of them, they're carrying sidearms, which is not at all suitable for coming up against someone with a long-barreled weapon from a high position. So they rely on those specially trained firearms officers, just like in the United States, you've got special weapons and tactic officers, SWAT officers, we call them. Every country has their own version of that. And we saw them arriving on the scene and taking up positions to be able to deal with the gunman. They push forward. They push forward as quickly as they can, but they've got to safeguard their own positions as well to make sure that they don't become a victim of the gunman. So that takes time. And while they're doing that, this gunman was still clearly in a position to be able to fire down to take out people on the ground. And we now know, according to that police chief, that at this stage, more than 15 people have been killed and 24 others have been injured. And it may be that as the hours and minutes tick on and as the police continue their systematic search of all of the buildings and all of the rooms within the various university faculties and campuses in this area, that they find more casualties. We can only hope that they don't, but we know that from similar incidents in the States, as these searches are carried out, more victims emerge.
So just to recap, more than 15 dead in a mass shooting in Prague. The gunman confirmed, 24 years of age, dead, a student at the Faculty of Arts. Earlier in the day, had killed his own father. Eyewitness reports say he threw his gun to the ground, put his arms up. We still don't know if he took his own life or was taken down by the police. Obviously a huge crime scene underway. We can see there people fleeing, these random gunfire, people hiding on balconies, barricading themselves into doors, gunshots ringing out across this historic city. A British couple there on their honeymoon confirmed as safe. I'm joined in the studio now by Michelle Dewberry. Michelle, astonishing scenes.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely awful. I was watching some of that footage that you've just been playing there, and when you listen to it with the sound as well, you hear those gunshots. It's terrifying, and you imagine, you know, being caught up in something like that. You're running and just hoping for the best, aren't you? And you know, there was children in pushchairs as well. You had some of that on your footage as well, didn't you? Just Unimaginable, isn't it? Absolutely unimaginable.
And Mark, the pictures, the earliest pictures we saw of people just fleeing for their lives, just clattering downstairs, scattering, absolute terror, absolute bedlam, your worst nightmare.
Yes, and I think, you know, if we can look to positives in such a wretched situation, one of the positives is the fact that because we've got so many of these mass shootings coming out from the US in particular, people know what to do if they're in buildings, which is shelter in place, lock themselves in this case to the classrooms and offices, put chairs and tables and anything they can find to barricade the doors, because they know that a marauding gunman, they might try and kick their way in the door, but if they can't, they move on to try and find their next victims. So that may well have saved many more lives here.
OK, dramatic day in Prague. We leave you with live images on screen, a mass shooting, more than 15 dead, 24 hurt. After the break is Michelle Dewberry with Jubes & Co. I'll see you at the same time tomorrow.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, Alex Berkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. As we go through the run-up to Christmas, there will be some rain around for most of us and also a bit of snow over the higher ground of Scotland. It's also looking windy, although the strongest winds we've seen so far today are starting to ease with the low pressure system clearing away towards the east. It is still going to be blustery though as we go through the rest of today. Some showers to watch out for, could be heavy, could see some hail, some thunder and also some sleet or snow, bringing some ice risks across parts of Scotland, particularly across Shetland. However, as we go through the night, some clear skies towards the east, subsiding as we see increasing amounts of cloud and some rain pushing in, and with those strong winds and